Hi everybody, we're going to do the language techniques. Now unfortunately, if you haven't watched the structure and form video, go back and watch it because you can see that I've already got a lot of blue in here, which is my language color. And because I've gone through those, I was really hard not to do that when we were combining structure. And my language is blue, and so you know that I've been drawn to the imagery. I just couldn't cope because we were talking about the opening, which is a structure idea. So we've got the opening, which is a structure idea. And we've even talked, oh, I forgot to put this actually written in. Write this in now, guys. Here is the ending, which is a structure idea. And we're talking about at the end, what does the language do? So we've got this language issues at the end, okay? We've got a simile here, which we're going to talk about. And we've got the fact that we have trouble. And I would say that we've hit wake and asleep, okay? We've hit awake, which is moved slowly through the mind by day, and we're a trouble to my dreams, which means asleep. And so at the ending of the poem, the conclusion of this epic story is a really big one, which is that God has spoken to him through nature. It starts out by being led by her and ends with imagery causing his entire life, awake and asleep, okay? His changed opinions, awake and asleep, and he is troubled by these opinions. Therefore, he's not 100% gone on with this change, okay? And the change is that it's his questioned his moral choices. Was it nature's fault that he even had this experience? I think he believes it is. And there his moral choice is not, is there a God, but is it nature that is his God? All right? And so right now he believes God has spoken to him through nature, that man is not superior to nature. Okay? Questions his moral choices, and it's a clear conclusion that man is not superior to nature. That nature is in control. And we could look at that with kamikaze and say, well, yes, because human nature, the nature of wanting of thinking about family, being constantly obsessed with family and love for our children then, and for our feelings of family are more powerful than anything that our surroundings can put across, particularly even our political surroundings. Right, so let's look at a few other language things. We've already checked out the semantic field of superiority and the questions with the moral ideas. We've gone through all that. I want you to look at the willow tree. One summer evening, led by her, I found a little boat tied to a willow tree within a rocky cove, its usual home. A willow tree is usually a sad image. So we've got this imagery. So we've got the sad willow tree and the happy, which is summer. Not only can I say the word juxtaposition when we deal with his moral questions then, even the imagery show a question. It's seriously juxtaposed all the way through with the sad, happy, sad, happy. Is this true? Is this not true? Is this true? Is this not true? So what we are seeing here is a very, very undecided individual. And that's why troubled pleasure is probably our best key in. I'd like you to now have a look at, oh, I've lost my page. I'd like you now to have a look at how he refers to his boat, all right? And this is going to give us an interesting idea. We start out with a little boat, and it's my boat. Now, is it his boat? Because I don't think it is. Therefore, this is feeding into this selfishness, isn't it? It's not his boat. It starts out as a little boat tied to a willow tree, which he's stolen, apparently blaming it on nature, and now he says it's his boat. Okay, and then we have this beautiful imagery of metaphors and the glittering and the sparkling, okay? And we get this sort of semantic field of the supernatural, beautiful, sparkling, all these glittering, melting, sparkling. Okay, it's beautiful, isn't it? And it just sounds amazing. And the melting obviously is the metaphor because they don't melt. Right. Why? Because he wants us to see this as being a magical learning moment, okay, where anything could happen. And then this happens, okay? And he has this pride. And we're going through it a bit like a story, but let's look at the boat, okay? What does he say? He ends with the idea of her being an elfin pinnace. Now, we've got a lot of people say that Wordsworth was a very sexually repressed individual, and that's going to make you feel uncomfortable that I've even said that, and that he might have had incestuous feelings toward his sister Dorothy, and you're going to feel very uncomfortable that he said that. But in fact, all of the Romantic poets didn't believe in limits when it came to that sort of thing, and so Lord Byron had a baby with his sister, and he was one of the Romantic poets that followed. Shelley, who wrote Ozymandias, he wrote a paper on how incest was good and natural and fine, and that actually contributed to him being kicked out of Oxford and out of the country. So he is not likely to say straight out he fancies his sister, but we are going to see a semantic field of sex in here. I probably wouldn't write about it in my essay, but if I don't tell you about it and somebody else does, you're going to say, why didn't you tell us about this? So pinnace, not really hard to see that that is a homophone with something else. Lustily dipped my oars, rose upon the stroke, my boat heaving through the water. Okay, total overdo on the semantic field of sexuality. I'm going to ignore that. I'm not even going to annotate it. I'm just telling you it exists, that people argue that that's important. I wouldn't. I'd skip it. It's too hard to get wrong. And I would talk about how he has used this boat, and the boat itself seems to be almost a metaphor for how he is feeling. Okay? So he starts out thinking that he's being led by Mother Nature, so he's little. He didn't have to say it was little, but he's a small person, and also he's not feeling very powerful. So this little boat is an image of very little power. Small power, we'll call it, so we don't get confused. So the boat here, this is an image of small power, is a little boat. Then we get my boat, okay? And we know it's not his boat, but the fact that he calls it my boat shows that he's feeling a bit more powerful. It's his now. He's taken it. And then we have it being called an elfin pinnace. It doesn't really mean, you're never going to be able to see that word again, are you? But when he calls it an elfin pinnace, he says it because an elfin pinnace is a very beautiful, magical boat, because it's elfin, and that descriptive word is that we get the image of magical because it's an elfin thing, but a pinnace is just a slightly bigger boat, okay? And the reason why elfin adds so much is that you get the magic, but you also get the quest, because of course you get the Lord of the Rings ideas about elves going on quests for rings, and because you're bringing in fairy tales, you get the fact that there's going to be a goodie and a baddie, and there's going to be an epic battle, okay? So this is where you get the epic battle going in between good and evil, yeah? And you get the epic battle ideas, ignore all of the semantic fields here, and then he ends up saying that it's my boat, and he says that his boat is like a swan, okay? And that describes his boat. And what is a swan? It is the biggest, most beautiful bird on the waters that we've got here. We've got the serene beauty, okay? If you can even read that. It says serene beauty, okay? It shows ultimate confidence. I am in charge. And it happens right before the Volta. So his final simile, or his final description of the boat, is that this is how he views himself before he suddenly has to change his view of himself with the Volta moment, okay? And this is the Volta moment. And we've got his boat, like a swan. It's serene, beautiful. He's confident. And there's also, you can see it another way. Remember the whole like a swan? It's a simile, so you could explore. I shouldn't really write explore, but that's what I'm going to do. Alternative ideas where he is, could be that he's paddling madly underneath, remember? Okay, so he could be trying to maintain standards. Remember, this is a question of moral standards or beliefs. Madly trying to do that and appear completely confident. And he's having to put more effort into it than he would like to admit. And that's what I'm writing down. Putting more effort into it than he would like to admit. Even to himself, as this was written to himself. And it also means he can hide that aspect from everybody else, so he appears what you would call, in inverted commas, normal. And therefore the boat, where we should have written this before, it is a symbol. And what does a symbol do? It stands in the place of something else. So what are we saying the boat stands in place of? This is little, and it's an image of his small power. Now it's mine, so he's more powerful. Then we get the fact that it's going to be magical and amazing, and he's an epic hero. And then he's like a swan, and he's going to be the winner in the epic battle because he's serenely beautiful and confident. We could suggest he's not as an alternative, and that's why he's not said he is a swan, but he's more like one, or he is something even more powerful. Okay? And therefore the boat is a symbol of his power. And you can see it increasing right from the start. So let's really cover that Volta now. Okay? And let's chase the boat through the poem. I promised we'd discuss the Volta, and when we discuss the Volta, if you are given this poem, you are on a winner because you won't have to remember all the words. You will find when you write about this and the poem's not in front of you, you won't remember long quotations unless you have this amazing memory and have just memorized every one of the 15 poems. And if you have, well done. Why not? But one thing you need to remember is the word huge. And you can say that the repetition right after the volta, it's the late deliberate reveal because it's epic, and it's a deliberate repetition of that. And so that is structural, and now we're going to talk about the word itself, which is repeated, which is simple. Okay? It's a simple word. And what would a simple word, after all that magical discussion of epic vocabulary with the beautiful glittering and shining, and then we get the elf in pinnace, and we get all that beautiful imagery, and then we just get, oh, it's huge and black, okay? And that's simple. So what does this simple vocabulary show us? Well, this simple vocabulary really gives us the idea that he's shocked, because that's what happens when you're trying to maintain a cover. When you're shocked, you go back to the beginning and you just become who you really are. So this simplistic vocabulary, it's not ambitious, which is what we are trying to be. But when we haven't really embedded that in who we actually are, and we have to put it on, we always go back to the simple when we've been shocked. And therefore, we get the idea that this is how he feels. The reader feels, the poet, Wordsworth, felt really shocked here. He really didn't know that he was so not that powerful. Okay? And so you're going to imagine then that the boat symbol gets less and less powerful as we go back. And because he suddenly realized, so what has taken its place and become powerful? Well, we talked before about how man was really powerful. And the only other way of making people or things in nature seem powerful is personification. And that's what happens here. Nature is personified, and it's personified as the mountain, okay? So we get the actual use of the word power, and we talk about the mountain's head, which it does, we talk about peaks and things, but he goes on from using the word peak, which he uses here, to talking about how it's upreared its head. So it sounds sinister, like a snake, doesn't it? And then we get the snaky, sinister vocabulary to go with that, with the struck and struck again, and growing still in stature, the grim shape, okay? Towered up between me and the stars, and still, for so it seemed, all that sinister. Those two things, that plus that, makes it sound sinister. So it's personified, and it's given power. But the power is not good, it's scary. And that's why it's being given this assonance. No, it's not assonance. What is it? Sibilance. I always get those backward. I don't know why. It's being given that sibilance, which sounds sinister as well. And realistically, the mountain now has the power and the boat won't. Okay, so this becomes a symbol of power. So whose symbol of power is this? Well, of course, this is nature, symbol of power. And where is his symbol of power? This is the boat. So it's humans, symbol of power, okay? And nature's symbol of power trumps human symbol of power and scares him silly, okay? And we talk about having, let's look at this personification, because there are so many different ways. It's almost like he overkilled the personification. It upreared its head. It struck. It struck again. Now, what does that do? That repeats it. Really, really just over the top personification. It grows. It towers. It has a purpose of its own. And in the end, he finishes the quotation like a living thing. It is over the top, that's simile. Remember, that's a simile. Let's use our writer's method. Overdone, what does that mean? We'll call it what it really is. The hyperbolic exaggeration of power. Okay, he spends a lot of time telling us that it is like it's living, whereas actually it's rock, so it can't really be living, but he's really telling us how scared he was. And he then has that it strode after me. Okay, and the fact that it's striding after me, which is here at the beginning, that's a structural idea. It's where it is it's at the beginning of the line. So you can add in that structurally the words plus the words themselves, because of the personification, indicate a message, which is that he will take this new perspective home with him. All right, and we know he does because the ending says he does. The ending says even when he's awake and even when he's asleep. Okay, and we get the repeated idea. Now, what do we get? We get huge and mighty forms. That repetition leads us back. We know he is referring to the mountain that do not live like living men. Okay? So he's saying it's not human. It's living, but it's not living like it's a person. It's living in a different way. And therefore, that's why I didn't talk to you about this in the last one. I just said, oh, it's lovely, but we'll talk about it later. Okay? And that phrase is, to me, one of the most important ones in the poem. So if you can quote that one, you do well, because he ends, remember, with the conclusion that God's spoken to him and led him, and then God has led him to a clear conclusion that man is not superior to nature. But this is important for him because he was raised a Christian. It's going to lead to something. Huge and mighty forms. He doesn't say the mountain. And therefore the mountain might just not be a symbol of power of nature. It could be the power generally. And so not this idea that it's a very simple idea, which is the mountain is bigger than him, the mountain scares him, now he realizes nature is more powerful. Might not be the only thing, because realistically what he's saying is, by not calling it the mountain, by calling it a form with that fricative that causes his teeth to bare, like that form, and then underlining he's saying he feels threatened with the fricative, instead of saying the huge and mighty peak, but huge and mighty peak that does not live like a living man, that would make it a simple literal poem. But in fact, we're seeing it now. He's used this fricative. He feels threatened because that's why he's used it. And therefore it's not a literal poem at all. He means this entire poem as an epic metaphor. Okay? So therefore, it's an epic metaphor. And what does the whole poem then stand for? Is he saying the mountain is God? Is he saying that he was the boat and that God is more powerful? He doesn't know. And he's never clear about it. But something for him and is causing him to feel threatened. And let's make some suggestions then. Because we know that the nothing is happy. He has no time happy. He's not asleep and not awake. Okay? So we could really believe that his entire moral value system is questioned. And that means, is there a right or wrong? Who gets to decide? Is there really a God? And therefore, The conclusion that God has spoken to him through nature is the very simple version, isn't it? It does question his moral choices. It has led to a clear conclusion that man is not superior to nature. But we could say that this entire poem is one giant epic metaphor as well as an epic poem, which questions the value system. Before we finish, let's check out the boat then. Let's see if it follows, shall we? We've got the my boat and the elfin pinnace. So what have we got? We've got the repetition of the words stole and covert, which are really sneaky words, aren't they? And then he's calling it a bark. That makes it sound absolutely minute. He hasn't even given it a boat name. A bark is the tiniest little word for a boat, okay? But all around his use of this tiny little vessel, tiny little boat, he uses these words here, okay? He uses covert, he uses stole, he uses trembling, he talks about being grave and serious, and that's a spectacle. What are those words all taken together? Remember, we have to call that a semantic field. It's very negative, isn't it? Stealing, being covert, it's serious, grave. I mean, we're getting of its negativity and its powerlessness. Right? Has been changed permanently. And therefore we could say, instead of the boat being a symbol of his power, okay, maybe the boat is a symbol of him. And therefore the metaphor is that he has been changed by all of these things. Right, I want you to consider how you would use this poem. This is the last one we've got. And as you can see, I've gone really over the top. Lots and lots of references. Good luck, everyone, and enjoy your Wednesday.